This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, we have a great show today with good friend of mine, Janis Putelis. Janis is now a producer of the MEATEATER TV show with another friend of the podcast, Steven Rinella. And we're going to get some great insight into some of the things that go on at the MEATEATER and some of the behind-the-scenes things that go on with each one of the shoots. And it's always great talking to Janis. Janis actually used to guide with Dar and I at Colbert and Scott Outfitters. He did a bunch of elk hunts with us, and I've known Janis for many years. Started out knowing him as a fly fishing guide in the Vail, Colorado area, and my wife and I have spent many a day with Janis on the oars, floating down the Eagle or the Roaring Fork or the Colorado, and enjoying each other's company. Janis is a phenomenal fisherman and is a great hunter and all-around great guy. And he's been using his talents there with Steven Rinella at the MEATEATER, and it's going to be a great episode. Before we get into that, guys, I want to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. As you know, GoHunt.com/insider is the title sponsor of the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. One of the things I want to say about GoHunt.com is you want to unlock hunting in the West, you need to join Insider today. Get everything you need in one spot. Complete state coverage. See detailed information for every unit, every species, every hunt. Inside the GoHunt.com Insider, you've got interactive maps. You can quickly find hunts that meet your exact search criteria and explore them easily. Strategy articles, learn new things, and find hidden opportunities with exclusive articles that are only able to be received if you're a GoHunt.com Insider member. Species breakdowns, top trophy units are hiding in plain sight. Find them with our statistics and historical data. Guys, also being a part of the GoHunt.com Insider, you will receive monthly giveaways, and they roughly give away $100,000 per year. They just gave away a $22,500 valued Doll Sheep Hunt and Nahanni Butte Outfitters. They've given away three Red Rock Precision rifles, some high-quality binoculars, and I want to tell you that you have an opportunity to get a free $50 gift card when you sign up for GoHunt.com Insider, and the gift card is for KUIU gear. And KUIU, as you know, is something that's dear to my heart. Dar and I have been wearing their gear for many years, and we are a firm believer in Jason Hairston and his company at KUIU. They provide the best quality products out there for hunters. You can get this gift card very simply by going to GoHunt.com/insider. Click the blue Join Now button and use the promo code JScott at checkout, and you'll receive that $50 KUIU gift card. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for their sponsorship of this podcast. Guys, I also want to tell you about the other sponsor of this podcast, DeadeyeOutfitters.com. DeadeyeOutfitters.com is a lifestyle hunting apparel company for hunters, by hunters. Check out episode 45 of this podcast with one of the owners, and you will see what I mean. Deadeye Outfitters makes quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. Deadeye Outfitters has the only license for creating Boone & Crockett apparel. Help support Boone & Crockett, because where hunting happens, conservation happens. Use the J. Scott promo code and receive a 10% discount on all purchases at DeadeyeOutfitters.com. Guys, before we jump right into the episode with Janis Putelis, I wanted to tell you about hunttoeat.com. That's HUNTTO eat.com. This is Janis and his brother's website, and they've made some really cool T-shirts, and you've probably heard Steven Rinella. If you listen to the MeatEater podcast, you've probably heard Rinella pitching these Hunt to Eat T-shirts. Check them out at hunttoeat.com. There's some pretty cool stuff. There's elk bugling, a Colorado state flag in the background. There's Hunt to Eat with the Colorado, Montana, and Texas license plate. Pretty neat shirts. And guys, I wanted to tell you about a promo code that Hunt to Eat is offering the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners. They're offering a 20% discount on all purchases. All you have to do is use J. Scott promo code. That's J. Scott in all caps. So Hunt to Eat, 20% off. Let's get right to the episode with Janis Putelis. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I have a very good friend of mine, Janis Putelis. I first met Janis up in the Vail Valley. Gene and I fished with Janis for 4, 5, 6 years, and we usually fish once or twice a week. And Janis taught me a lot about fishing and taught me a lot about rowing. Even though I wasn't rowing then, I got to watch him row a lot and picked up a lot of pointers from this guy, and I'm anxious to talk to him today. I'm proud of Janis. Janis used to guide with Dara and I, and he quickly left us behind and has catapulted his way to being the producer at MEATEATER and with Steve Rinella. And just proud of all of his accomplishments. He's a heck of a hunter. He's a phenomenal fisherman. And happy to have him on the show today. Janis, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. That is quite the intro. Don't know if I'll be able to live up to that, but I appreciate it. And thank you for all the support over the years, because all that catapulting can't be done on, by just yourself a lot of times. So without you and Dar and other folks pushing me along, wouldn't be here. So.
Well, I mean, once you're hanging out with Colburn and Scott Outfitters, I mean, you have all you have is upside from there.
Totally. You don't know who's going to call you next, the governor, president,
If you're hanging out with Jay and Dar, you've got a lot of room to move forward for sure. No, buddy, it's been awesome watching your success with the MeatEater and watching you fall into place there and just hit the ground running. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you went from, why don't you tell me how you met Steve Rinella and how your first gig went there, and then what you're doing now.
I met Steve through a common friend. He's actually married to a high school friend of mine, a gal that I went to high school with. And so I think it was kind of a perfect storm, because between his wife using me as her really only hunting reference, and so when she wanted to get in on a hunting conversation, she'd say, yeah, I used to know this, or I know this Latvian guy lives out in Colorado and guides. And then I think you guys, what hunt did you guys do with Steve? Was it Gould or was it a Coos that you guys helped him out with and met him first time?
No, he came down and hunted Goulds and buffalo, and so we kind of hit it off. Dar and I, he came down and hunted on one of our ranches in Mexico. And then I think at that point you guys had moved to Alaska.
Yeah. And so I think you guys had dropped my name there too. So my name was just kind of in his brain at that point. And then I think you put a picture of me glassing some Colorado high country in Western Hunter. And he saw that, and he took it as a sign and contacted me. And somehow I knew that he had a Toke sheep tag that year in 2012, and I was living in Fairbanks, just a couple hours away from that unit in Alaska. And so I said, hey, man, I'd love to come along. I just want to go for a flight in a small airplane into some Alaska backcountry and, see what sheep hunting's all about. And he's like, for sure, come along, man. You can carry a few things, and we'll have a grand time. And so, yeah, we made the plans, and I read everything I could in the next, 30 days or whatever it was about Dall sheep hunting, and rolled in there fired up. And Dan Doty, who was the producer at the time, said, "Hey, fill out this paperwork." And I'm like, "Paperwork?" He said, "No, I'm just here to ride the wave, see what this is all about, have some fun." He said, "No, you're working." And I said, "All right, that sounds good. Paid vacation. I'll get paid to go sheep hunting." And so I filled out my first 0.0 paperwork that day, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, and you guys had a good hunt, if I remember, a pretty good adventure, and Steve got a really nice ram, and you guys got to eat some Dall sheep meat up on the mountain.
Yeah, you hate to say it, and we're all mature enough hunters to know that you take the easy ones, but it was almost too easy, and it, because we were successful on the first day, we got basically kicked out of sheep country, sooner than we would have liked to have. It would have been nice to run those ridges and, just be able to look around the next corner, at least for a couple days, before we had to boogie. But, once we killed that ram, it was warm, and so we had to get the meat out, and that was that. So early success, it was nice, but at the same time, it was bittersweet because we didn't really get to do too much tromping around.
Janis, what was that, about 3 years ago? How long ago was that?
It was August 2012.
Okay, so it'll be 3 years coming up here. And since then, you guys have been basically all over the globe, Bolivia. Give me some of the cool spots that you guys have been since then.
Oh, man. Cool spots. Bolivia, it was cool. It was an experience. It's not like a place I'm just recommending everybody go to. After that trip to the jungle, to a hot, humid jungle, I realized that I'm a mountain kid at heart, and I like the weather and the temperature of the mountains, and the climate.
Humidity isn't your best friend?
Man, it was just tough. I mean, middle of the night, at the coolest point of the night, you're still laying on top of your sleeping bag, not quite sweating, but definitely not dry. And it was pretty uncomfortable. So it was an experience. I'm glad I did it, but I'm not raring to go back.
But while we're still on Bolivia, being a fisherman, you guys were down there gonna fish for those Yellow-Bellied Dorado. I mean, aren't they just beautiful yellow? And turned out you got upriver or something in huge rains, and it all muddied up, so it wasn't quite what you were hoping for, right?
No, it was a bummer because we'd seen, and that's fishing, it's fishing conditions, but we had seen on video how good it could be, clear water sight fishing for these giant golden Dorado, and they do have some big ones. And unfortunately, it just rained every day, and we watched massive red mudslides right in front of our eyes hitting the water. When you see that, you're like, yeah, it ain't gonna clear anytime soon.
Yeah.
We were still able to catch those fish on bait. I caught one that was maybe, I don't know, I think it was a sub 10 pounder, but Steve caught a toad that was, I think, near 15 or something like that. I mean, it was just a giant fish, and a lot of fight. What
kind of fight did those jokers have? I mean, did they jump a lot, or was it a big tug, or what, big long runs, or what was it?
I caught mine on some pretty heavy duty tackle, and I had no idea what I had on. I think he did jump one time, but as soon as I had that fish on, I'm on the production crew, so it's not like I have a bunch of time to be hanging around fishing. And so I was going to land this fish, whatever it was, giant catfish, Dorado. And so I just, stuck my rod tip down and just started reeling, not on a fly rod, just on a bait caster. And I think he jumped once, but I manhandled him pretty easily because I was maybe a little overgunned. I think Steve caught his on a little bit lighter tackle, and I wouldn't say it had a bunch of great runs. Maybe one big run, definitely some good tugging, but definitely some good jumps, from a big fish like that. So I could see how, casting big giant flies in clear water to a fish like that would be nothing short of spectacular, And they've got these giant catfish called cerubi, I believe, that also sit in the riffles that when the water's clear, you can sight fish to. And I don't think that fish would be any less fun to catch,
Did they make it sound like when the water's clear that those fish are spooky, or are they very predatorial and when something hits the water, they're coming to check it out?
I think it just come down to, how many times those fish have seen flies. I think, they were fishing some fairly uncharted waters, and, those fish just hadn't seen a lot of pressure, and so I don't think they had to be too sneaky. But I think that, after you catch and release, a fish like that that's been around the block a few times, I'm sure you'd have to start, being a little trickier.
What other places have you guys been to that are kind of wild places since you've been with the Meat Eater?
Sonora, Mexico with Jay Scott is pretty wild.
It can get western in a hurry, can't it?
British Columbia and Alaska are probably the next bigger adventures. And, every time I go to Alaska, whether it's southeast, even just to Steve's cabin, I have to kind of pinch myself to be like, wow, here I am again. Because, short 3 years ago, I knew nothing about Alaska, and it was just kind of this, just a dream in my head. And, now I've been back, I don't know how many times, still less than 10, but a few. And, that place is just sweet, man. It's just packed full of adventure, and there's a lot of stuff to be explored there. And the same thing with BC. When we went up there to hunt for grizzly bear, you just feel like you're kind of getting into some country that's just a little bit bigger and a little more wild than what you normally find in the lower 48. I'm sure like the Bob here in Montana has probably got that feeling, and the Frank Church Wilderness over in Idaho, but for the most part down here, you just don't get that kind of super vast, expansive feeling that you get from Alaska and BC, and no more so than in the Brooks Range. We've been there twice now, and that's probably one of the places that is on my list of when this is all said and done that I'm going to go back to, with friends or with family. For sure. And I don't know to hunt what, whether it be a sheep or to caribou or maybe just to go on a, raft trip and catch fish. But it's sweet and it's wild.
Where was the trip where you got where a grizzly bear chased you or whatever?
That was British Columbia. And
tell me that story.
It wasn't quite.
Weren't you thrown out as bait? Like Steve said, Janis, you stay here by all the raw meat, and we'll see if you're alive in the morning.
We couldn't make it into a story like that. I was more excited. I wasn't chased, and I was whether you can call it a real charge.
Janis, we're going for ratings here. You were chased for how long, and he was baring his teeth, right?
I did what you're not supposed to do, and I ran as fast as I could. But luckily, I'm a long-legged son of a gun, so I actually gained ground. No, what happened is we had just gotten into the mountains. I mean, literally an hour into, we had hiked maybe 2 miles, and we got into a basin that opened up, and we started glassing, and immediately found a sow grizzly with 3 cubs. And at the same time, one of our cameras went down. And
what do you mean? It just shut off?
Just shut down.
Blue screen? Okay.
It was we couldn't figure it out, and so we needed to replace it quickly. And so we just made a big pile of gear, and those guys were just going to hang out and keep watching the bear and look for a campsite. And I just took the broken camera and basically turned around and hiked back to the truck, swapped cameras, came back, and got back to the meadow where all of our gear was just piled up, and those guys had moved off somewhere. At that time, I didn't know what they were doing. What they were doing is they had gone up above because they had lost sight of the grizzly, and so they wanted just to kind of keep an eyeball on her just to make sure she was leaving and not coming closer. And so I just get there and I'm settling in after another nice 4-mile tour, and had a drink of water, put my puffy back on. And just by the time I wanted to sit down and start doing a little glass and see what kind of critters are cruising around, right above me I hear, hey, 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 boom! Gunshot goes off, and when you hear that in that country, immediately what's going on. So I sprang to my feet, pulled my bear spray off my hip, and look up the hill. And I mean, it was instantaneous. I look up the hill and I can see the sow grizzly coming down the mountain, not a mountain, coming down a hill, I should say. She's probably 200 to 300 yards from me at that point. And she's just mowing down these like 4 to 10-foot pine trees. I mean, they're just falling in front of her. She's not turning around any trees. She's just mowing them over. And right behind her, I'll never forget it, just looked like she had these like 3 little miniature brown blobs just like tethered, to her rear end, just by a couple inches. And those were the 3 cubs, And she's coming right down the hill, and at that point, she doesn't know I'm down there, and so I'm like in the middle of the meadow, waving my arms, talking, just being loud to let her know that I'm there. And she makes it about halfway down. She stops and she gets up on her hind legs so I think she can see over those little pines in there. And they actually probably weren't pines; they were fir trees. But she's like looking, and she kind of does a scan of the area, and I'm thinking, perfect, she's going to see me, and she's already been spooked, she's just going to bail off the side of the hill and go away from me. Well, she like does her little scan, and pretty much what looks like locks eyes with me, and then draws a chalk line between the two of us, and just gets back on all fours and continues her, fast pace right at me. I'm thinking, man, that's not the result.
How far away is she?
The result you want. And so
she's how far, Janis, in closing?
Now she's, I don't know, 150 in closing. Well, she does the same thing again. She stops, she stands up, she kind of scans, sees me, and keeps coming right at me. And now she's at the base of the hill, so she's at the meadow pretty much dead even with me. And or like height-wise, she's kind of come off the hill. Now she's at maybe 75 yards. She does it again. So I get to see her in her full glory, standing on her hind legs with her 3 little cubs, like I said, just tucked in right behind her. And I'm still waving my arms and talking to her and, just letting her know that, it's the Latvian lover here. I'm not a fighter. I don't.
You don't have enough meat on your bones to make a meal.
Totally. It ain't worth her time. And, she, again, doesn't do what I'm wanting her to do. And she pretty much at that point, I want to say it was 10 yards. It might have been 20 or 30. When you have a, grizzly bear bearing down on you, it's hard to really gauge that distance. But I remember having a rock ahead of me that was about 10 yards. And I knew that if she hit that rock, that's when I was going to start spraying the bear spray. And it seemed like when she was very close to that rock, where I was like putting the pressure on that trigger on that bear spray, she veered off and then went on, basically went across the creek and up the other side of the mountain and out of the basin. We saw her cross over the high ridge, maybe 5-10 minutes later. And
then what? Rinella pops out of the trees and is laughing, or
he
what?
He pops out of the trees and was like, man, I was all ready to start digging through your gear if you're involved. But no, it's definitely it's a moment that makes you check yourself, and
I'm sure you had to check your shorts. Did you surely you filmed all of that?
Well, I wasn't running a camera at the time, and so those guys got the footage of them getting charged, because she did charge them. So like I was saying, I don't know if I can call that a charge on me, because she was like just running away from them in my direction, and then I happened to be, in her line of travel. And at some point, she decided that yes, she was maybe going to eliminate me as a threat, and then she changed her mind. At least that's what I play out in my head every time. But yeah, unfortunately, we did not get all that, but. It's all right, because the image is burned into my head forever.
I'm sure you'll never forget that. Janis, the MEATEATER is consistently at the top of the Sportsmans Channel as the best outdoor television show. Obviously, Steve is an incredible host. Talking specifically about Steve, does he follow the script much, or is a lot of what he does ad-lib?
Oh, it's all ad-lib.
Okay, so there's not necessarily a script. He just rolls with it, whatever's shaking.
I mean, we have a little powwow before each episode, and we kind of talk creatively about what we foresee that the episode being and what's going to come out of it. But rarely, it's just like it's life. You're just kind of there, just trying to capture it and hope for the best. Every now and then, we might have to recreate, say, just like, 3 words or a half a sentence. But when you ask someone to recreate a whole sentence, or worse yet, 2 or 3, or like a whole action, we feel like the viewers immediately pick up on that, and we're not into that. So that's why we have just super highly trained and qualified camera guys that they just don't miss a beat, really, because in at least for us, and for a lot of the production world, like they say, if it didn't happen on camera, it did not happen. And so these guys are just always ready to capture, any sort of action that might happen, and just as importantly, any sort of dialogue that we might get out of Steve or one of our guests.
I think having hunted with Steve, a couple times, and having hunted with you, one of the interesting things, people ask me, what is Steve like when the camera's not on? And I always say he seems just like he is when the camera's on. And I think, in your opinion, is that one of the reasons why the show is so successful, is that Steve just acts like himself, and what you see on camera is the way he is in everyday life?
Yeah.
And do you think that's a good reason for the success of the show, is that you've got a host that knows how to hunt? This isn't a guy that doesn't know how to skin things and quarter things, and he's the real deal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of reasons for the success, but certainly Steve's, he's a guy that just likes to do it on his own, and it's not just like a DIY kind of a hunter. He takes that approach to, just about everything in life, and he's often like, he's right there with us in the crew with, like, if something breaks or goes down, cameras, he's not going to mess around with those. He'll admit that, like, for that kind of electronic stuff, like, he'll ask for help. But if it's like I'm just trying to think of a good example,
You mean like if a flat tire or something,
yeah,
he's
exactly.
out there changing the tire?
He's going to change it as fast or as good as anybody, or if you get a backpack, that rips apart, like, he'll be the one that pulls out the speedy stitcher or the, giant needle and the dental floss, and is going to stitch it right up. And, like, he's just handy, and that's kind of what attracted me to him in the beginning, was that, like, he had that background of a lot more trapping, a lot more fishing, and just a broader kind of an outdoor hunter, upbringing than I did, and I was impressed by that, like I said, when we got into a pickle, sometimes he'd be right in there, with us, figuring out how we're going to get out of it.
Somewhat of a MacGyver type of a guy.
Totally.
Yeah. What are some of the funnest trips that you guys have been on, where you guys, had some really fun times, and then maybe contrast that with, maybe a couple trips where you just had circumstances, whatever may be, make it really, really tough?
tough for us usually comes from moisture and rain. So anytime you see a rainy episode with us, like that one we did with Joe Rogan and Brian Callen on Prince of Wales Island last fall, where it rained, 90% of the time we were there, and not just a little, but a lot. It makes it very hard on the equipment.
Like, have you guys ever gotten in any hairy situations hiking, like glaciers or cliff lines, or has anybody fallen or any crazy stuff happened?
Not really. Now we have a crew that's all pretty strong, and maybe not everybody is like a mountain hunter in the group, but we have guys that are, used to be professional extreme snowboarders that have, climbed all sorts of big peaks all over the world and snowboarded down them. And so that experience in the mountains can easily translate into, doing well on a hunting trip in the mountains, because it's, the mountain's not, changing what it's throwing at you just because you're, whether you're hunting or you're snowboarding, you still got to deal with the mountain.
Sure.
So, it's just a strong crew that makes good decisions, and we, try to keep everybody in check to not get, caught out in some of a bad spot. It's just not worth it, to get caught like that. So we try to keep it on the safe side.
Well, that's good. Tell me about this new book that you guys have been working on. I know you guys have put an unbelievable amount of time in it. And I can't wait to see it. Tell me a little bit about it.
It's called The Complete Guide to Hunting, Butchering, and Cooking Wild Game. And it got to be such an enormous project that we actually cut it into 2 volumes. So volume 1 is big game. Volume 2 is small game. And small game includes waterfowl, turkey. And it's a cool thing, man. We've been working on it pretty much since I started working with MeatEater, which was, like I said, 2012 fall. So we've been at it for 2.5, 3 years, and it's finally come together, and it's sweet to see. But it's
very comprehensive, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd like to say that, but I almost feel like the topic of hunting is so broad and so deep that you'd have to put out in a whole set of, like an encyclopedia, to really say comprehensive about, what we do and what we talk about. But I'd say definitely from like a beginner's viewpoint, you could call it comprehensive. I feel that like someone that's, never ever could certainly read this and get a lot out of it and think, man, I'm actually feeling fairly armed and ready. But there's also enough just interesting stuff in there, and enough stuff from that, like for instance, what you and Dar weighed in on, desert bighorn sheep hunting. There's a lot of people out there that are great elk hunters that maybe don't know anything about desert bighorn sheep hunting. And so, even experienced hunters, I think, will find, the stuff that came from, from a more experienced viewpoint, they're going to find that interesting. So I'm hoping it's for everybody. And then of course there's the butchering section, which is I always feel you can always learn something new about butchering. And then the recipes in there at the end are all great. So it's there's a lot in there, that's for sure. You can't deny that. There's a lot of just it's a wealth of knowledge, and it'll be something you can just kind of keep around, and there'll be a good, I don't want to call it a coffee table book, but it would definitely earn its spot at a coffee table if you were to choose to put it there,
When do you expect that to be released, Janis?
It's August when it's coming out. So I think you can pre-order now on Amazon. And I want to say August 12th is the date. Don't quote me on it, but I want to say August 12th is when the volume 1 is due out.
When you were talking about the book, one of the things that struck me as and I hadn't really thought about it until you just started talking about the book, but one of the things that I think that makes you such a great fit with the MeatEater crew and being a producer of the MeatEater show is I I've known you for a long time, and you've always been into cooking wild game. I mean, that's, there's people that just hunt, and there's people that hunt and they eat what they shoot. But you like to cook, and you like to work up new recipes, and you like to make. I've just known you long enough, so it kind of dawned on me that, man, you are a perfect fit for the Meat Eater.
Yeah, we had a few fishing trips where I think we ate roast elk sandwiches and maybe some elk jerky during the fishing trip. Where
does that come from with your upbringing and with your own personal hunting? Have you always been into that, or is that something that you just acquired you just wanted to start figuring out how to cook wild game, or have you always been fascinated with it?
I don't want to say always been fascinated with it, but I do remember, and I was talking to a guy about it recently, that when I grew up hunting and basically hunting deer in Michigan and Wisconsin, and we'd hunt each state with our rifles or shotguns for about 3, maybe 4 days, and then I would spend some time bow hunting in Michigan too. But basically, growing up, I would hunt a total of 6 days, 3 with a rifle in Wisconsin, 3 in Michigan. And I remember going to the Wisconsin deer camp, and it was a little bit of a bigger to do because we had to drive 7 hours from Michigan, and at the heyday there was probably 20 plus hunters there. And I remember when I got old enough to start thinking about what we were going to be making for the food, I remember being like, hey, we're here killing deer. How come we're not eating deer? Like we would always eat like the inner tenderloins on, Saturday night after the first day of hunting. But other than that, it was like the only game that was served. And I remember kind of bringing that to some guys' attention. And from there on out, we kind of sort of, started eating more, the deer, at camp. We're bringing, last year's deer, whether it was in chili or, steaks or whatever. And then I spent 3 years in the kitchen when I first moved to Colorado, working as a line cook.
So Janis, with cooking, that you like to cook wild game, Rinella likes to cook wild game. One thing that the listeners might not know about you is you lived in the Vail, or actually the Minturn, Colorado area for quite a while, and you really became fascinated and really enjoyed archery elk hunting and elk hunting in general. Talk to me a little bit about your love for elk hunting in the mountains.
Man, there's nothing better. And I'll tell you one thing that really just chaps me and burns me is that last year, which was 2014 fall, was the first year since probably 99 that I did not kill an elk. And normally I would kill 2 elk, sometimes 3 if I could hunt multiple states. But, in Colorado we could kill a cow and a bull or 2 cows. But that's, I guess, what happens sometimes when you make the big time. No, I'm joking. We moved last year, and that really cut into my hunting time. But no, I think my love for it, it definitely. I went on a drop camp hunt, and then was semi-guided on the last day by the outfitter back in '99 when I killed my first bull, and had a great experience there. And then I was hired on to work at that camp the following fall, and then I really got to pretty much my gig there was like I was ordered to go out in the dark in the morning and go cruise around and learn the country and learn about elk, and then I was due back for breakfast, and then I would pretty much do manual labor all day long, and then I was basically kicked out again at 4 p.m. to go and repeat my elk rounds. And
and was that basically to tell the outfitter where you found elk?
No. That was just basically, that was his way of teaching me, what I needed to know, and I just, learning the country. And I feel like that's as important as anything to a hunter's success, especially, really any kind of hunting probably, but for elk hunting, for me, for sure, Like the more I know a chunk of woods or a mountain or whatever it might be, the more success I have there. You just know the lay of the land, you know all the dips, you know where to be looking, you know what the wind's commonly doing, and then also you know what the animals are doing in that certain area often. So you always know, like, once you see them there twice, you know you're probably going to see them there again. And so anyway,
so you started developing a pattern and seeing a pattern in the animals.
Yeah, but more than that, but knowing that, you know, knowing your country and knowing where the trails connect, and you know, in Colorado, oftentimes it's not quite open enough to where you can be just glassing up animals all the time, and so you have to dive into the timber and dive into the Quakies and just go still hunt around and know, you know, where each trail leads, and if you don't find elk, you know, in one spot where you could be a half an hour later to, you know, find some elk. But I just feel like a lot of times people don't spend enough time just getting to know their little elk spot, you know. Eventually someone says, "Oh, it's my honey hole." Well, it's someone's honey hole because they learned it, you know. When they say honey hole, it's not just because they went there every single time and killed an elk. They've been there a gazillion times, and they know that, you know, that place produces, but they know that place produces because of all that experience and, you know, time put into a spot. But I was going to get back to my love for elk hunting. I think one of the things that really kicked it off was that hunting back in the Midwest, we always, you know, you sat tree stands and we sat in blinds and you just sit all day long. And my dad was, when we started hunting together, he was into getting into the woods like 2 hours before, you know, the crack of light. And so you're looking at like a 12, 13-hour day, you know, starting at, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning, sitting until daylight at 7, and then sitting until, you know, 5 p.m. dark comes. It's a lot of sitting. And so when I started elk hunting, and people are just like, "Yeah, man, just go out there and put the wind in your face and go roam around, you know, and you'll get into elk." That freedom and that, like, different style, like, that's what really, I was like, man, this is awesome. You know, I don't have to just sit all day long anymore. I can cruise the mountains, and I like that. So
what now? And you came down for a couple years and guided with Dara and I in Arizona. What'd you think of Arizona elk hunting compared to what you had seen in other states?
Oh man, totally different animal. I mean, a lot of similarities, but, you know, you guys definitely brought me to a different, I don't want to say next, but definitely to a different level of elk hunting. And it was an eye opener because, I mean, the biggest thing was, you know, the use of optics, the use of tripods with your optics. And again, just, you know, sitting and taking the time to glass. It was amazing. You know, just like you learn about how much that does for you, just sitting around glassing, letting, you know, your eyes do the walking versus your legs. And then you just think back to, you know, the previous 12 years of elk hunting. And I was thinking, man, I could have been sitting on that mountainside and at least glassing a couple of those meadows, you know, and seeing what those elk were doing, you know, popping out, you know, instead of just cruising around so much. So that was probably the biggest difference, you know, I'd say, is that I just really learned to go optics heavy with you guys. But Arizona's sweet, and we had a sweet thing going there because we were guiding in some of the best units in Arizona. And so it obviously has the biggest bulls and probably some of the better calling, I think, that Arizona has to offer. And that's just sweet, you know. I mean, I don't want to recommend everybody goes down there to see what the calling's like, but it's when you get into some of those, you know, meatballs of buglers just ripping, and you can when you get in there, it's almost just like you can't keep up with how many bulls that you've called by you know, and like you start seeing the younger 5 points, and it's like you don't even, like, you look at them like it's a cow, you know, you're just like, all right, get out of here, keep moving, because that next gurgling bull over there, that's the one we want to go see now. And it's pretty fun, when it's all said and done and it's noon and you're just sitting there in the shade of one of those junipers, you're like, wow, what just happened?
Yeah, and
whether you kill one or not, it's fun.
I think one of the cool things too is there's a lot of elk, but the terrain is not, it's not very physical, and so you can usually move around to several different spots in a morning, whereas maybe in Montana or Colorado or Idaho or what have you, where, you've got big steep drainages, and you may hear a bull bugling way across the canyon, but it may take you 2 hours to get to them. In Arizona, you can run and gun and, be over here and be a mile over there and a mile over there, within a morning. And I think for me, that's what makes it so fun is you can see so many elk and hear so many elk in one outing. You were fortunate to guide for some really nice bulls before you became the producer at the MeatEater, and we had fun having you around, and we had fun, knowing we were proud knowing that you're a great guide and you got some great bulls for your clients, and it was fun while it lasted.
Oh, I still miss those days. People ask me if I'd ever go back to guiding, and I definitely would, man. I mean, we always just had a lot of laughs and just good times, and as much adventure and challenge, as I have at my current job, we get it, guiding as well.
Absolutely. Janis, I want to shift gears a little bit. The MeatEater podcast has been very successful on iTunes, and I really enjoy it. And you guys actually came down to Arizona and did an episode with Dara and I that will air later this summer. But tell me about the podcast and a little bit how it just has taken shape, and listening to you and Steve kind of back and forth is hilarious. I don't even necessarily think you guys are trying to be funny, but it just cracks me up. And I don't know if it's because I know both of you but everybody I talk to loves the MeatEater podcast. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the success of it's been a little bewildering, I guess, because it was just something we decided to basically try and just kind of throw it at the wall to see if it sticks. And obviously it has, and we're getting great feedback from it. A lot of times, a lot of the comments we get are that people actually enjoy it even more than the show, because you're just getting a little bit more Steve, and there's just more time to let it all come out and let it all breathe and, really dive in. That's the hard part a lot of times with the show, is that we take, a week of hunting and talking and dialogue, and we compress it to 22 minutes, and you just really can't fit it all in. And that's the harsh reality. It's a bummer. But with the podcast, we sit down for an hour, and everything that we talk about, comes out, whether it's an hour or 90 minutes. It's funny that people even think that I'm on the podcast, because I feel like for the average MeatEater podcast, I say about 10 words. So it must be a powerful 10 words. I'll let Steve do most of the talking, and if I need to wrangle him in, then I try to. But that's a tall order there.
Yeah, every once in a while you need to corral him a little bit. I hear you trying to do it, and then sometimes he just continues and goes right on, and that cracks me up even more. When you try and say, well, we need to take a break, and he just keeps right on going. I love it.
Yeah. So no, it's fun, and I enjoy the heck out of it, because when we sit down for a podcast, you're guaranteed to learn something and usually be entertained as well. And everybody that we've sat down with thus far, they're just great people, So it's always nice to meet more great people in the world.
Absolutely. Well, Janis, it's been awesome having you on with me this morning. And have you gotten out at all? And you live in Bozeman, Montana now. Have you gotten out fishing, or do you have any plans to do any fishing this summer with the kids or anything?
Is there fishing here?
What a turkey!
I didn't even. Are there some rivers to fish around here?
You want to talk about a guy that used to just live and breathe fishing, and now a 25-inch brown trout could be outside his window and he wouldn't even stop and look at it.
No, I do have some plans. We're actually going to go do some family camping this weekend, and I'm planning on throwing probably both a fly rod and a little spin and tackle rig in the truck. And we did go fishing with the kids on the lower Yellowstone, not for trout, but for kind of a mixed bag of sauger, walleye, pike, a lot of smallies. Actually with the Rinella crew, and we had a lot of fun there doing that. So no, it's definitely on the radar, but I've got 2 young kids, and so some things have had to just been cut from my list of fun activities I like to do, and so fly fishing just has been one of them. So I'll be back at it. I promise you. Especially if you come up here. Are you going to come up here and come float the Yellowstone?
I might have to do that. I know that last summer when you were passing through, we were in Jackson Hole the month of August, and you passed through, stayed with us a night, and we actually fished, and it was fun. We fished the upper Snake. We put in at Pacific Creek and floated down to Moose, and actually floated down to Dead Man's, I think, but it was awesome getting to actually row and let you fish, and watching you cast and be spot on with all. We were fishing big dries, and it was fun watching you. Kind of reverse roles where you used to row and I used to fish, and getting to row and watching you fish was a lot of fun. When you caught some nice fish, and that was definitely something that made my summer last year, watching you catch all those fish, and having Gene in the boat and just kind of the 3 amigos back in action. That was a lot of fun, and maybe we'll have to do that again. Well, buddy, it's been awesome.
I was going to say, though, real quick, a note on that trip. It was awkward for me, one, to have you back there rowing and telling me where to cast.
Bossing you around the whole time.
But all those fish that we caught, we have pictures of, and I'll remember them. But the one that burns into my mind, and I cannot forget it, is that big old yellow slab that came out of that side channel. You had positioned me just right above that little island, and I was able to, put like a downstream presentation down this side channel. Just fed a bunch of slack line in there, and there was like an overhanging tree, and it was just small enough where you really couldn't get the boat in there, and if you did, you probably would have spooked whatever was in there. And right at like the tail out, man, that just big mouth followed by just a big bright yellow side comes up, just fully commits on my fly, and I did not have it in me to give it the old, God bless the queen, and then set the hook. Instead, his mouth was still open, and as I set the hook, I could feel that tip of that hook just scrape along the top of that fish's mouth as it popped loose, and he gave me a little head shake just to be like, yeah, buddy, see you next time.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it took me about a half a mile to quit ribbing you and quit pouting because you missed that fish, and I can be a little intense at times, and you were just laughing about it, and I was going, did you see the size of that thing? But you did end up catching a really nice one, but it was a fun day for sure, and catching those cutthroat up there on the Snake River is always fun, and
scenery's not bad either when you're floating down that river.
Yeah, for sure, with the Tetons there. So that was awesome. Well, buddy, it was awesome. I'm really look forward to maybe doing this again, and look forward to hearing the MeatEater podcast with Dar and I. You, me, and Steve and Dar did an episode that'll be fun to listen to, and just want to tell you how proud I am of you, and how good a job you've done, and the success that you've had is just you're a great person, and I value your friendship, and just really excited that you've done so well, and look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future.
Well, thank you again for all that, and thanks for having me, and thank you for the continued support. And let's definitely do it again sooner than later.
All right, buddy. You take care. Tell the girls hello, and we'll be chatting at you, okay?
Take care.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Use the promo code JScott and receive a $50 KUIU gift card when signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.